So hello everyone, I'm Umair and we are on another episode of Better Tech. Today we have Ravin with us and we also have Dr. Shahzaad with us. So both are great exponents of AI machine learning, and we are kind of very excited. I'm very excited to learn from both of them and figure out what Ravin startup is doing, what problem they are solving, and then let Dr. Shahzaad ask some of the interesting questions around AI and so on. So welcome everyone on the show. Welcome Dr. Shahzaad, welcome Ravin for being on the Better Tech.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Really glad to be here.
So Ravin, will start off by quickly trying to understand your background as well as what your startup is doing, what problem are you trying to solve, and where you are right now in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder of Credal AI, which is building out the information security layer for the AI industry. So my co-founder and I, Jack and I were at Palantir for about 8 years in my case, 5 years in his before this. And a lot of what we were doing was operationalizing AI on some of the most sensitive data you can imagine, right? In the military, in the US government civil service, and a variety of other sensitive use cases like pharma. And one of the things that we really saw there is, well, obviously, these AI tools are incredibly powerful and it's amazing what they can do. But we also saw that the practical reality of large enterprises being able to deploy this was actually fundamentally the biggest barrier was, not even necessarily making the tech better or cooler, but actually just getting the basics of data governance and data security in place. And so, that's what Jack and I set out to build for the rest of the world. And, the way we think about it at this point, right, there are sort of 3 main layers of security that people really need when it comes to AI. One is they need to know that their most sensitive information is not going to end up in an AI training set, right? And so being able to automatically identify and mask or redact that information before it gets into the model is an extremely important technical safeguard. Secondly, they need to know what actually happened, right? So you need to get audit logging on all of your interactions with these AI models, not just from your own employees' use of ChatGPT, but also from the internal tools that your teams are building and from the way that your software vendors are using AI with your data as well, right? So audit logging is part 2. And then part 3 is well, look, you want to feed all of your cool corporate data into these AI models, but you want to make sure that the AI is not then taking data that's super sensitive and then spitting it out to everybody, right? And this is not just in the sense of training the data, training the model, but also if you provide a strategy document as context, but only the CEO and CFO is supposed to have access to that document, you then don't want the entire company to necessarily be able to ask a question being what's happening to my budget next quarter, right? And suddenly find out, this company's strategy is going in the wrong direction before you're ready to announce that. So that's the third thing we do is we sync all of your data from all of these different data sources and maintain a representation of who has access to what and enforce that the AI model can only use the data that the user actually has access to when they're providing an answer. And that's what we do.
Okay. And when did you start off on this journey where you are in terms of traction, funding, team, or the product rollout?
Yeah, so we started the company in October of last year, or it may have been November, actually. I'm already forgetting the dates a little bit. But we launched the product in March. And since then, it's just been an absolute roller coaster. It's been crazy. We closed our seed round where we raised 4.8 million in April. And, the demand has just been through the roof. I mean, we've had so many absolutely gigantic corporations reaching out to us, beating down the door because they're super excited about the tech, but they're also terrified of the security implications of what they do. But we're focused mostly on the 1,000 to 5,000 person company size at the moment. because I think that's where, our technology makes the most sense today. And obviously, as we get bigger, we'll try and serve the like 5,000 to 500,000 person orgs as well. So that's where all of our customers are. Well, most of our customers right now are in the 1,000 to 5,000 person org. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when you give people access, as soon as people get access, like the usage just kind of goes through the roof, right? These things, the underlying technology is, speaks for itself. And really the key for us is just getting enterprise IT to feel comfortable enough to like turn it on at their organization. So that's where we're at. We haven't yet done our like big splashy public launches. So we're actually planning that for the next 2 weeks. One on Product Hunt and one on Hacker News coming up soon. So watch out for us.
Before I let Dr. Shahzaad ask, getting into some technical deep dive, from purely from an enterprise perspective, is your solution is like out of the box that I can just start using it, or it would require some sort of an implementation where an implementer comes in and have to integrate it with the enterprise tools, and then you build an interface on top of what they're already using, or maybe what they intend to use, and then start using it, or it's just more like out of a box system?
Yeah, well, actually, you can definitely just sign up and start using it out of the box. It's super easy. The sort of standard, the like basic out of the box use case is like relatively limited compared to like the full enterprise integration. But as soon as you sign up, you get the benefits of PII redaction, secret redaction, as well as the benefits of like audit logging on all of your interactions. I think the most powerful implementation really comes when you do the enterprise integration, and you typically need an enterprise IT admin to grant access to your Google Drive, your Confluence, your Slack, all of these like great sources of language data. And doing that is pretty easy, right? It's all point and click. It's very straightforward to add these integrations. But typically at these large enterprises, there's a limited number of people that can actually do that. And then as soon as that happens, the world is your oyster, right? You have AI and you have all of your like corporate data ready to use on that, but it's all secured and protected at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think I take it from here. I will ask just a few questions about AI. Of course, the context could be your personal context, could be your organizational context, could be the domain, and what do you think maybe in general. So nothing need to be absolutely specific to something. So let's start from the very basic thing. How do you see AI evolving over the years, and where is it heading in your domain? Just to give some context. I mean, there had been some data management, master data management in the past, but now we have very specialized and this type of operation. So what do you see? Where is this evolution coming and where is this going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the word AI itself has been used to mean so many different things over the past few years. Like at this precise moment in time, when people use the word AI, they typically tend to mean like a very specific type of AI, which is, these large language models, which is of course not the only type of AI. But when I think about like, the research progress, certainly there's a lot of progress on the generative side of AI, right, at the moment. So the large language models, but also, the image generation models and such like that Midjourney and Stability have pioneered, or Stable Diffusion, right? So I think like in the immediate term, we're going to see a lot of investment and a lot of progress in these specific areas, these general purpose language models and generative models on the image side. And I think one of the things that I expect to see change very dramatically over the next few months and years is, if you look at the way these models work today, typically you need to be like a little bit of an expert in like prompt engineering, as it's called, in order to really get it to do the thing that you want it to do, right? You need to be pretty good at crafting the exact right prompt. And I think over time, as the amount of people using these models, increases a lot, and the amount of training data, the instruction set that's available to the models increases, you're going to see a massive decrease in the need for this like prompt engineering, right? You're going to see that the models get a lot better at just sort of realizing what you mean without needing these like very crafty little tricks and hacks to like get it to do the thing that you want to do. So that's going to be a really big direction of travel. I think one of the things that's going to be a big area of investment and research, but I'm not sure if we'll necessarily break it in the next few months, is the area of factuality and honesty in these models, right? I think that's going to be a really important challenge if we want to get these models out of like sort of development and toy mode for a lot of use cases, particularly things like medical use cases and financial decision making. We really have to get out of the current scenario where it's really hard to tell if the model's hallucinating or not. And so there's going to be a lot of investment and a lot of research into trying to build much more factually accurate AI, and a lot of research in trying to identify hallucinations when they come up. And I'm optimistic that the research will make a lot of progress there, but I think it's an area that's still like not completely proven out how far we'll get with that research yet.
Very interesting insight. So related to that, I recently had a chance to see the draft of this AI Act in the European Union, which also separates like really high risk AI application, particularly the ones that make the decision for human.
Right.
So what do you see, what is in your opinion is like there is a lot that could be done on the model side in order to improve the trust, or do you think there is, let's say, more that has to be done on the regulation side and application and processes side?
Yeah, totally. I mean, funnily enough, I think in some ways, the biggest and most important area for us to look at is actually neither the model algorithm nor the regulation, but actually the underlying substrate, which is what data are we feeding these models, right? Now, like it's sort of a truism in like machine learning and AI that we say garbage in, garbage out, right? If we give these models bad data, then they're going to come to bad conclusions. And I think fundamentally from a factuality, from an honesty perspective, from an accuracy perspective, a lot of the work that we're going to have to do to get these models to be more accurate, be more honest, be more factual, is really identifying the places in the training sets, because these training sets are gigantic, right? And so it's a lot of work to just find the places in these training sets where we're giving the models information that lead it to make bad conclusions, and figuring out how we strip that information out, figuring out how we feed it like better, more accurate, more reliable training data is going to be a big area of research, and also just like engineering schlep work. It's like not necessarily always the most exciting work to do this, but it's really, really important. So I think that's like a big area where we can make a lot of progress in just being a lot more thoughtful about what data are we actually giving these models. That's probably where I'm most excited about progress being made. Certainly there's like stuff to do at the other end of the spectrum. So that's like what's going in. And then there's probably, there is certainly work to do about understanding and verifying what's coming out at the end of the day as well. And I think we have seen a lot of progress from folks like OpenAI and Anthropic already at, okay, you've got your trained model. Now, how do you make it safer? How do you make it like more honest? They have made like good progress there, I think, already. I mean, for me personally, you see huge improvements between GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 or ChatGPT in this regard as well. So there's probably like further improvements that we can get from that side of the spectrum also.
I see. Very interesting. What if you now consider like the way, let's say, ChatGPT or they improve from 3 to 3.5 to 3.4 is also using a lot of human feedback, right?
Yeah.
Into the model. So how much is the potential of using this type of learning inside the domain you are working?
Yeah, I mean, so our domain is in a way very general, right? Because we're building the information security layer for AI. Like our customers are using Credal to do pretty much anything you can imagine. So we have engineering use cases, we have sales use cases, we have customer support use cases, we have marketing use cases. On Mother's Day, we had a bunch of people log into our product and use it to write their Mother's Day cards, right? It's a very broad domain that we work in. I think the context that I kind of particularly find most interesting from a security perspective is how do you protect against abuse of the AI models, and concretely like prompt injection attacks is a big area that we think about a lot. So one of the things that we've noticed, for example, is that occasionally you can ask these models like, how do I get in touch with you, right? And it will just tell you an email address that it made up, right? It'll be like, email this email address, and it's, completely made up email address. That's actually a vector for an attack in the future, right? Because companies, like malevolent actors will realize that if you put the right information in the right place such that it's going to wind up in this training data set, there's a pretty good chance that the model will pick that up and start to think that its email address actually is like, whatever random email address the threat vector, the attacker wants the model to believe is its email address, right? And then you can start tricking the end user into sending their support queries or sending their data even to that email address in a way that's a concern. So that's like a big part of the reason why I talk about like focusing on the data that's actually feeding these models, because it's a big open goal for attackers to inject like malevolent information into that training data set, which is so gigantic, it's actually very difficult to identify like where the bad stuff is coming from. And so that's like definitely something that I think about a lot in terms of the security angle of what we do, is like, how do we make sure that smart attackers are not able to trick the model into believing things that we don't want it to believe, just by inserting like a bunch of false information into a place on the internet that is going to wind up in GPT-5's training data set, right?
Just before you were starting to elaborate on this, I was about to say that your software is pretty generic. I mean, AI or no AI, it can sit on top of anything where you are giving the enterprise information, and it can redact and all that. But actually, my perspective changed a bit the moment you used the word prompt injection. So I mean, it kind of reminded me of whole SQL injection and cross scripting attacks, which is like really a prompt injection. So interesting perspective over there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we see all sorts of craziness all the time. I mean, sometimes users just want to try. They just want to try and trick the AI, right? And it's like fun for them. But it's for sure true that there are people out there trying to actually like do nefarious things with these AIs as well. And so it's just really, really important that we are extremely thoughtful and careful about how we let folks use these sorts of tools, especially because at the end of the day, although it's still early days for the technology, there is no doubt that these technologies will be involved in the theater of war in the next sort of 10, 20 years, for example. And getting ahead of the problems that are implied by prompt injection, for example, is going to be really, really important now, because these things are going to be interacting with weapons, with drones, with military infrastructure before we know it. And we have to be really, really, really careful in that context.
But just because I have two AI champs on this podcast with me, so I was just wondering, is this fair to assume that? I mean, I think the big tech has monopolized the world in many ways, and if you want to create a big tech competitor, you cannot do it anymore from here. I mean, you have to do something different. But AI has created a little bit of level playing field because you can now create your own model. I mean, it's kind of new for everyone, but tech still has the advantage. They have so much of a data that they
Yep.
can use to train. So has it created a level playing field, or still it's not a level playing field at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's very much not a level playing field, right? Look at who are the big.
It's favoring them more because they already have their data and digital and
Right.
And the
yeah.
cost, infrastructure that you
Yeah,
need to
Right.
build something. Right? Please go
Look
on,
at
Ravin.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look who's winning. Look who's winning. It's Google, Microsoft, like these are the Nvidia, I guess, as well. But there's definitely a huge incumbency advantage with this
Nvidia
tech.
has a party. I mean, they had been riding on crypto and now AI. I mean, they are in the best place in the world, I feel.
VR is
Yeah.
coming in future.
Right.
AR and
Right.
VR, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
interesting.
I think there is a huge incumbency advantage. I think the place that startups will be able to succeed is actually in places where there's a slightly different angle. I think it's going to be very difficult to build like a Notion competitor by just like incorporating AI, because Notion can incorporate AI as well, right? But it's in solving the problems that are completely new that are created by some aspect of AI, right? And if you can solve those problems really well, then you can actually compete with the incumbents effectively.
Any examples of those problems you have in your mind that you can think are very valuable if someone can solve them?
Yeah. So for example, I think, obviously I think the security component is a big problem. I also think like, AI is going to create a new set or a new type of versioning and sort of code control concerns that people are going to want to worry about, where it's less about has this code changed or what's the nature of the change of this code, but more like what is the nature of the change in the output that's running the same like prompt as before, because the models are changing, everything underneath is changing. Even if you have the exact same code, the exact same prompt, you can find that your output is shifting a lot. So there's going to be some degree of software that's going to be needed to manage and control like how the uncertainty of a model's output is made more like reliable, trustable, like certain by software. So I think there's certainly going to be like at least one or two big players that may well be new companies that start up there. And I think the analogy on the security side that I always think of is Okta. Okta is one of the only companies in the world that's ever really gone head to head with Microsoft and won, right? And the reason that they did that is because they built like a really compelling partnership program where they have all of these different software vendors that integrate with Okta for their SSO. And so as a result of that, like if you're an enterprise thinking about who to use for SSO these days, chances are, if you're a software company, you're going to use Okta because most of the tools that you want to use like integrate with Okta as their primary like SSO provider. So that's how you're going to do it. Like AI companies that are building tools for all of the different like AI businesses that are getting started today. Like those companies, those infrastructure tools, the shovels, if you like, the picks and shovels builders, like some of them will get really, really big for sure. But the majority of the AI applications will basically just become features in the tools that you already use today.
I agree. So gents, we are like 25-30 minutes into the discussion. So Dr. Shahzaad, if you have any wrapping up thoughts or something or questions,
I think yeah, Ravin, I think I would like to also understand what is your journal, perspective. How do you see AI towards the society, towards yourself, the future? The whole exactly the two opinions going on. Great, fear. How do you see? Where is it heading?
Yeah, that's so true. It's such a great question. I mean, I think the answer is like it's really up to us which future we end up in, right? AI is a tool. It's like any other tool in that it can be used for great good and it can be used for great evil, right? And I don't use that word lightly, but it's true. Like in the hands of the wrong groups, in the hands of the wrong people, in the hands of the wrong governments, like this tool is very dangerous, actually, right? And I think one of my biggest concerns, one of the things that I feel like most troubled by, is that there's sort of this kind of inherent assumption that it will be really like that we have to pick one side or the other, that like we have to either believe that AI is good and we should accelerate it as much as possible, or we have to believe it's bad and we should do everything to stop it, like pause all development and forget about its existence and bury our head in the sand, right? When the practical reality is that what we actually need to do is engage very thoughtfully about what is the point of the software that we're building, right? Like, what are we trying to accomplish with these tools? Like, what change in the world do we want to create, right? And I think, you know, if you get down to it, what most people want to do with these tools is they want to make the world like less manual, less like schlep work, right? And they want to unlock human creativity. They want to empower people to be more thoughtful, more creative, and more inventive and more imaginative with these tools. And I think if we design our approach, if we think, you know, if we're deliberate about the way that we build these systems, then we don't have to press pause. We don't have to over-regulate the industry to death. We don't have to you know, forget about data privacy controls and just build everything we possibly can as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, I feel like that nuance is missed in a lot of the public discourse, and people tend to say like everything's great or everything's evil, instead of this is very powerful. How do we shape the power of this tool to like serve us as a society? And I think that's what I'd love to see more of in our discourse.
So I guess a lot of things can be done for the good for the society. The problem is that when a few hands will try to make sure that they do not get to everyone. So that's where people try to now steal that. I mean, this is the story of weapons. This is the story of money. This is the story of oil. This is the story of everything, every bad thing that you think about. So if you try to create a monopoly using an AI, then you're already doing something which is bad in terms of business. And others will try to disrupt you using the same tech. But if you treat it more like a healthcare, which you feel that it's the right for everyone to get to the everything, then we can have I think a better future with that. So I feel right now the way it's shaping up, because if you are trying to regulate it for your own good and you're not letting it into the hands of others, I don't think people will just stick around and wait that when someone will give it to them. So that's my 2 cents on that.
No, I totally agree. I think we should think about this technology as a public utility. It's like, you know, water or electricity, you know, it's going to be something that everybody is going to need fair access to. And if we do end up with 1 or 2 gigantic monopoly, oligopoly like players that have access to everything, and they get to decide who gets access and who doesn't, then I'm pretty deeply concerned for like the direction of travel.
It's like you ban everyone in the world from having a programming language at their disposal.
Right.
If they don't have it, they will just invent stuff and try to disrupt it. But because everyone can have access to that, nobody thinks about it that way. So great. Guys, thank you very much for being with me today. I think the discussion was so interesting. I could have stretched it for an hour more, but we can definitely come back and do another episode. So thank you, Dr. Shahzaad. Thank you, Ravin, for being my guest today and being on the Better Tech channel. It was a great, enlightening discussion, and I found it very interesting. Thank you very much, guys.
I had a great time.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Thank you.